No one sees it. Not really. They see your face. They see your posts. They see your presence. But they don't see the weight, the pressure, the silent war you fight every single day. Because your struggle, it doesn't make noise. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't ask for attention. It stays quiet, hidden, buried under a version of you that looks fine, that looks normal, that looks like everything is under control. And that's the hardest part, because when people look at you, they don't see what you're carrying. They don't see the nights you stayed awake, thinking, overthinking, trying to figure things out. They don't see the moments where you felt completely lost, completely unsure, completely alone. Because from the outside, you look okay. And that creates a gap between what people see and what you actually feel. And that gap, it's exhausting because you're constantly holding it together, constantly managing your emotions, constantly pretending that everything is fine, even when it's not, even when you're struggling, even when you feel like you're falling apart inside. Because you know something. You know that most people won't understand. They won't feel what you feel. They won't see what you see. They won't carry what you carry. So you stop explaining. You stop sharing. You stop opening up. And you handle it alone. Quietly. Silently. And that silence, it becomes your reality. Your default. Your way of dealing with everything. Because it feels easier. Easier than explaining. Easier than being misunderstood. Easier than trying to make someone see what they can't feel. But that doesn't make it easy. It just makes it invisible. And invisible struggles are the heaviest. Because there's no recognition, no validation, no acknowledgement. Just you and your thoughts and your emotions and your responsibility to keep going. Even when you don't feel like it, even when it's hard, even when everything inside you wants to stop. Because life doesn't pause for your struggle. It doesn't slow down because you're overwhelmed. It keeps moving, expecting you to move with it, to function, to perform, to show up, even when you're not okay. And you do. That's the thing. You do. You wake up, you go through your day, you handle your responsibilities, you carry on like nothing is wrong. And no one notices because you don't show it, because you can't show it, because you've trained yourself to hide it, to manage it, to keep it inside. And that takes strength, real strength, not the kind people see, not the kind people praise, but the kind that keeps you going when no one is watching, when no one is helping, when no one even knows what you're dealing with. And that strength, it's real, even if it's invisible, even if it goes unnoticed, because every day you're fighting something, something internal, something heavy, something that most people wouldn't even understand. And yet, you keep moving, you keep trying, you keep showing up, and that matters more than you think. Because the world only sees results. They don't see the process behind it. They don't see the effort it takes just to stay consistent, just to stay focused, just to not give up. They only see what's visible, and your struggle is not. But that doesn't mean it's not real. That doesn't mean it's not valid. That doesn't mean it's not important. Because what you're going through is shaping you, changing you, building something inside you that no one else can see. Resilience, awareness, strength, discipline. The kind that doesn't come from easy moments. The kind that only comes from going through hard things, alone, without recognition, without applause, without support, and still choosing to keep going, because that's who you are. Not the version people see, but the version that survives what no one knows about. And that version is powerful. Even if it feels tired, even if it feels overwhelmed, even if it feels like no one understands. Because you don't need everyone to see it. You just need to keep going. Because one day, all of this will make sense. All of this will build something real, something strong, something unbreakable. Because struggle, when faced silently, creates a different kind of person, a deeper one, a stronger one, and a more aware one. And that's who you're becoming. Even if no one sees it, even if no one acknowledges it, even if no one understands it. Because your struggle is not for them to see. It's for you to grow through. And you are, every single day. Even when it doesn't feel like it, even when it feels slow, even when it feels invisible. Because growth is not always loud. Sometimes it's silent, just like your struggle. And that silence is where your strength is being built. It's not that people don't care, at least not always. It's that they don't see and they don't feel what you feel. Because understanding is not just about listening, it's about experiencing. And no one has lived your life. No one has carried your exact weight. No one has felt your exact thoughts at 2 a.m. when everything is quiet and your mind is loud. Because from the outside, your life looks normal. Your routine looks ordinary. Your behavior looks controlled. So people assume you're fine. They assume you're handling it. They assume there's nothing wrong. And that assumption creates distance because they respond to what they see, not to what you feel. And what they see is not the full story. It's just the surface, a version of you that you show to the world, a version that's stable, functional, composed. But beneath that, there's something else, something deeper, something heavier, something they don't have access to because you don't show it. And even if you tried, they might not understand it because people interpret things through their own experience, through their own mindset, through their own emotional capacity. And not everyone has the depth to understand yours. Some people have never faced what you've faced, never thought the way you think, never felt the way you feel. So when you try to explain, it doesn't land the same way. It doesn't hit the same way. It doesn't connect because they're processing it through a different lens, a simpler one, a less intense one. And that makes you feel even more alone because now it's not just that you're struggling, it's that you're struggling and no one gets it. No one fully understands what's going on inside your head. And that's frustrating because sometimes you don't need advice, you don't need solutions, you just want someone to understand, to feel it, to see you beyond the surface. But that's rare because real understanding requires presence, attention, empathy. And most people are too busy with their own lives, their own struggles, their own thoughts to go that deep. Not because they don't care, but because they can't. Because they're dealing with their own version of something invisible. And that's something you have to accept. Not everyone will understand you. Not everyone will see your struggle. Not everyone will recognize what you're going through. And that's not always a bad thing, because it forces you to become stronger internally, to rely less on external validation, to stop needing everyone to understand you. Because the truth is, they don't have to. Your struggle is not for everyone to understand. It's for you to navigate, to process, to grow through. Because the more you expect others to fully get it, the more you'll feel disappointed, because they won't always. And that's okay, because your strength doesn't come from being understood. It comes from continuing even when you're not, from showing up even when no one notices, from pushing forward even when no one acknowledges the effort, because that's where real growth happens, not in comfort, not in recognition, but in isolation, in those moments where it's just you and your thoughts and your decision to keep going, because that's something no one can take from you, no one can fake, no one can replicate. It's yours and it's real.
And even if no one understands it, it's shaping you, building you, strengthening you in ways that are invisible but powerful. Because not being understood teaches you something. It teaches you how to understand yourself, how to listen to your own thoughts, how to trust your own process, how to move forward without needing approval, without needing validation, without needing someone to tell you it's okay, because you learn to give that to yourself. And that's rare. That's powerful, because most people depend on others to feel seen, to feel validated, to feel understood. But you're learning to do that alone, and that changes everything. Because now you're not controlled by what others think. You're not limited by what others understand. You're not waiting for someone to see you. You're moving because you know what you're going through, because you understand it, because you feel it, and that's enough. Because in the end, you don't need everyone to understand your struggle. You just need to not let it stop you. And that's what you're doing every single day. Even when no one sees it, even when no one gets it, even when no one knows.
It's always the night, not the day, not when people are around, not when you're busy. It's when everything goes quiet, when the noise fades, when the world slows down, and you're left alone, alone with your thoughts, alone with your mind, alone with everything you try to ignore during the day. Because during the day, you can distract yourself. Work, people, tasks, movement. There's always something to keep your mind occupied, to keep you from thinking too much, to keep you from feeling too deeply. But at night, there's nothing. No distractions, no noise, no escape, just silence. And in that silence, everything comes back. Every thought, every doubt, every fear, every question you've been avoiding. They don't knock. They don't ask permission. They just appear, one by one, filling your mind, taking over your focus. And suddenly, you're not in control anymore. You're thinking about everything, your past, your mistakes, the things you should have done differently, the opportunities you missed, the time you wasted. And it hits you, all at once, like a wave, heavy, overwhelming, unavoidable. Because now you can't ignore it, you can't escape it, you have to face it. And that's where it gets hard, because your mind doesn't just show you reality, it exaggerates it. It makes everything feel worse, bigger, more intense, more permanent. It tells you you're behind, you're not doing enough, you're wasting your life, you'll never catch up. And in that moment, it feels true. It feels real. Because there's nothing to challenge it, no one to interrupt it, no voice to tell you otherwise. So you sit there, staring at the ceiling, or your phone, or nothing at all, just thinking, endlessly, repeating the same thoughts over and over again, trying to find answers, trying to make sense of things, trying to figure out what to do. But instead, you get stuck in a loop, a cycle of thoughts that doesn't lead anywhere, because thinking is not solving, and your mind doesn't always want solutions. Sometimes it just wants control. It wants you to keep you in that loop, because it feels familiar, because it feels like you're doing something, even when you're not. And that's exhausting, mentally, emotionally, because you're not just tired physically, you're drained inside, from thinking too much, from feeling too much, from carrying too much in silence. Because no one sees this. No one knows about these nights. No one hears these thoughts. No one feels this weight. Because during the day, you look fine, you act normal, you function. But at night, it's different. At night, you're real. No mask, no filter, no performance. just you, and everything you've been holding in. And sometimes it breaks you, not completely, but enough to feel it, enough to feel the pressure, enough to feel the weight of everything you're dealing with. And you don't cry, not always. Sometimes you just sit there, quiet, numb, thinking, feeling everything without showing anything. And that's the hardest part, because you're experiencing something intense in complete silence, no support, no acknowledgement, no one to share it with. So you carry it, you process it alone, you deal with it the only way you know how. And eventually, you fall asleep, not because you're okay, but because you're tired, mentally exhausted from everything that happened inside your head. And the next day, you wake up and you do it again. You go back to normal. You go back to functioning. You go back to hiding it like nothing happened, like everything is fine. And no one knows, no one sees, no one understands what your nights look like, what your mind goes through, what you deal with when everything is quiet. But here's the truth. Those nights matter more than you think, because they show you something. They show you what's really going on inside you, what you've been avoiding, what you've been suppressing, what you need to face. Because those thoughts, they're not random. They're signals, signals of something deeper, something unresolved, something important. And instead of running from them, you need to understand them. Not every thought, not every fear, but the pattern, the message behind it. Because once you understand that, you gain clarity. Not instantly, not perfectly, but enough to start moving forward. Because those nights, they're not just pain, they're awareness. They're showing you where you need to grow, where you need to change, where you need to act. And that's powerful, even if it doesn't feel like it. Because most people ignore those moments. They distract themselves. They avoid thinking. They avoid feeling. But you face it, even if it's hard, even if it's uncomfortable, even if no one sees it. And that builds something, something real, something deep. Because the person you are at night is the person you truly are. Not the one people see, not the one you show, but the one that thinks, feels, questions. And that version of you is growing, learning, evolving, even in silence, even in darkness, even when no one knows. Because those nights, they're shaping you in ways that are invisible but powerful. And one day, you'll look back and you'll realize those nights didn't break you. They built you, silently, piece by piece, thought by thought, until you became someone stronger than you were before. And no one saw it, but you felt it every single night.
You're tired. Not just physically. Not the kind of tired that sleep can fix. It's deeper than that. It's the kind of tired that sits inside you, that doesn't go away even after rest, even after a break, even after you try to reset. Because it's not your body that's exhausted. It's your mind, your emotions, your constant effort to keep everything together. Because every day you're carrying something, responsibilities, expectations, pressure, not just from the outside, but from within. Because you expect more from yourself. You push yourself. You hold yourself to a standard that most people don't even see. And that pressure, it builds, slowly, quietly, over time, until one day you feel it. That heaviness, that weight, that feeling like you're running on empty, like you're giving more than you have, but you don't stop. That's the thing. You don't stop. Even when you're tired, even when you're drained, even when everything inside you wants to pause, wants to rest, wants to escape, you keep going. You show up. You do what needs to be done because you don't have a choice, because life doesn't wait, because responsibilities don't pause, because expectations don't disappear just because you're tired. So you move, even when it's hard, even when it's heavy, even when it feels like you're barely holding it together, and no one sees that. No one notices how much effort it takes just to do the basics, just to stay consistent, just to not fall apart. Because from the outside, it looks normal. It looks like you're managing. It looks like you're handling it. But inside, it's different. Inside, you're pushing through resistance, through exhaustion, through moments where you feel like giving up. But you don't, because something in you won't let you. Something in you keeps you moving, even when you don't feel like it, even when you don't have the energy, even when you don't see immediate results. And that something, it's not motivation, it's not excitement, it's not inspiration, it's discipline, it's resilience. It's the part of you that refuses to quit, that refuses to stay down, that refuses to give up on yourself. And that's powerful, because most people stop when it gets hard. They stop when they feel tired. They stop when things don't go their way. But you keep going, silently, without recognition, without praise, without anyone telling you you're doing great, because you don't need it, because you've learned to rely on yourself, to push yourself, to keep moving even when no one is watching. And that's rare. That's strength, real strength, the kind that doesn't show off, the kind that doesn't need attention, the kind that just exists and carries you forward. But that doesn't mean it's easy, because being strong is exhausting. Holding everything together is exhausting. Always pushing forward is exhausting. And sometimes you feel it, that moment where everything slows down, where your energy drops, where your mind gets quiet, and you think, I'm tired. Not as a complaint, not as an excuse, just as a fact, a simple truth that you've been carrying too much for too long, without a break, without a release, without anyone to share it with. And in that moment, you pause, not physically, but mentally. You reflect, you feel the weight, you acknowledge it, and then you move again, because that's what you do. You don't stay there. You don't let it stop you. You don't let it define you. You feel it, and you keep going. And that's the difference between someone who breaks and someone who builds. Because it's not about not feeling tired. It's about continuing, even when you are. It's about showing up, even when it's hard. It's about doing what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like it. And that consistency, that silent effort, it's shaping you. It's building something inside you that can't be seen, but can be felt. Strength, endurance, control, the ability to handle more, to push further, to stay focused when others lose direction. And one day, that will show. Not in your struggle, but in your results, in your growth, in your transformation. Because all of this, all this effort, all this endurance, all this silent pushing, it's not wasted. It's building something, something real, something strong, something that will separate you from who you used to be. And no one sees it now. No one recognizes it now. But that doesn't matter, because you're not doing it for them. You're doing it for you, for your future, for the person you're becoming. And that person is worth the struggle, worth the effort, worth the exhaustion. Because one day, you won't feel this way anymore. Not because life gets easier, but because you get stronger, more capable, more in control, more aligned with who you're meant to be. And when that day comes, you'll look back at all these moments, all these days where you felt tired but kept going, and you'll understand something, that this right here was the reason you made it, the reason you grew, the reason you became someone different, someone stronger, someone who didn't quit even when it was hard,
even when no one noticed, even when you were tired, because you didn't stop. You kept going. And that's what matters. Not how you felt, but what you did despite how you felt. And you kept going. That's your power. Even if no one sees it, even if no one knows, even if no one understands. Because in the end, it's not about them. It's about you. And you didn't stop. You kept going. And that's everything.
You think it's not enough. You look at your life and you feel behind, like you should be further, like you should have more, done more, achieved more, become more. And that feeling, it stays with you, quietly, constantly, pushing you, but also making you doubt yourself. Because no matter what you do, it doesn't feel like progress. It doesn't feel like you're moving forward. It feels like you're stuck, repeating, trying, but not getting anywhere. And that's frustrating, because you're putting in effort, you're trying, you're pushing yourself, but you don't see results. Not big ones, not obvious ones. So you assume nothing is changing, that you're not doing enough, that you're falling behind. But that's not true, not completely. Because what you don't see is what's happening beneath the surface, the small changes, the subtle shifts, the internal progress that doesn't show immediately. Because not all progress is visible, not all growth is loud. Some of it is silent, invisible, gradual, happening in ways you don't notice right away, like how you think, how you respond, how you handle things. Because if you look closely, you're not the same person you were before. You've changed. Maybe not in obvious ways, maybe not in big achievements, but in small moments, in decisions, in reactions, in awareness. Things you didn't have before, strength you didn't feel before, clarity you didn't understand before. But you overlook it because it's not dramatic, because it's not visible, because it doesn't match what you expected progress to look like. So you ignore it, you dismiss it, you tell yourself it's not enough, but it is. Because every small change matters. Every small improvement builds something. Every small step moves you forward, even if you don't feel it, even if you don't see it. Because growth is not instant, it's not explosive, it's not always obvious. It's built slowly, over time, through consistency, through effort, through repetition. And you're doing that every single day. Even when it feels like nothing is happening, even when it feels like you're not moving, because you are, just not in the way you expect. Because your mind focuses on what's missing, what you don't have, what you haven't achieved yet. And it ignores what you've already done, what you've already built, what you've already improved. And that creates imbalance, a distorted view of your progress, where everything feels less, where everything feels incomplete, where nothing feels enough. But if you step back, if you look at the bigger picture, you'll see something different. You'll see effort, consistency, persistence. You'll see someone who didn't give up, who kept going, who kept trying, even when it was hard, even when it was slow, even when it didn't feel rewarding. And that matters, more than results, more than recognition, because that's what creates results. That's what builds success. Not one big moment, but many small ones, stacked, layered, over time. And you're in that process right now, even if it doesn't feel like it, even if it doesn't look like it, because growth doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it feels slow. Sometimes it feels frustrating. Sometimes it feels like you're doing everything and getting nothing back. But that doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means you're in the middle, in the part where things are being built, where things are being shaped, where things are developing without showing yet. And that requires patience, trust, belief. Not blind belief, but awareness. Awareness that growth takes time, that change takes repetition, that results follow effort, not immediately, but eventually. So instead of looking for big results, start noticing small ones. The way you think differently, the way you react differently, the way you handle things better, the way you don't give up as easily as before. Those things matter. Those things are real. Those things show that you're changing, that you're improving, that you're becoming something more than you were before. And that's enough. More than enough. Because you're not starting from zero. You're building every day, step by step, thought by thought, action by action. And one day it will show in ways you can't see right now, in results, in outcomes, in changes that feel real, that feel obvious, that feel undeniable. But until then, you have to trust the process, trust your effort, trust your consistency, trust yourself. Because you're doing more than you realize, more than you give yourself credit for, more than you acknowledge. And that matters. Because growth starts internally before it shows externally. And you're already there, already moving, already building, even if no one sees it, even if you don't feel it. Because growth is happening right now, inside you, silently, powerfully, consistently.
There's a weight you carry, not in your hands, not on your shoulders, but inside you. A constant pressure that never fully goes away, even when you're smiling, even when you're around people, even when everything looks fine. Because this pressure, it's not visible. It doesn't show on the surface. It doesn't make noise. It just exists, quietly, constantly, following you through everything you do. And most people have no idea it's there, because you don't talk about it, you don't explain it, you don't show it, you carry it alone. Because you've learned that not everyone will understand, that not everyone will care, that not everyone can handle what you're dealing with. So you keep it inside, you manage it, you push through it, every single day. And that's exhausting. Not physically, but mentally, emotionally. Because you're not just living your life, you're managing pressure, expectations, responsibilities, things you don't always talk about, things people don't always see. Because from the outside, it looks like you're just doing what everyone else is doing, working, showing up, handling things. But inside, it's different. Inside, you're thinking about everything, your future, your responsibilities, your goals, the things you want to fix, the things you need to improve, the things you feel behind on. And that creates pressure, not from others, but from yourself. Because you expect more, you want more, you know you're capable of more. And that awareness, it's heavy, because now you can't ignore it. You can't just relax. You can't just stay the same, because something inside you won't let you. Something inside you keeps reminding you you need to do more. You need to improve. You need to move forward. And that voice, it doesn't stop. It doesn't pause. It's always there, in the background, pushing you, driving you, even when you're tired, even when you don't have the energy, even when you just want to rest. And that creates a conflict, because part of you wants peace, wants calm, wants a break, but another part wants progress, wants growth, wants more. And you're stuck in between, trying to balance both, trying to move forward without breaking down, trying to handle everything without losing yourself. And that's pressure, real pressure, the kind that doesn't come from the outside, but from within, because no one is forcing you, no one is pushing you. You're doing it to yourself,
because you care, because you want better, because you don't want to stay where you are. And that's powerful. But it's also heavy, because when you carry that alone, it builds up, over time, quietly, without release, without expression, without anyone to share it with. And that makes it harder, because now it's not just pressure, it's isolation. It's dealing with everything by yourself, in your own space, without anyone fully understanding what's going on inside you. And that can feel overwhelming at times, like you're carrying too much, like you're thinking too much, like you're trying too hard without getting enough back. But you don't stop. That's the thing. You don't stop. You keep going. You keep handling it. You keep pushing through, because that's who you are. You don't quit. You don't give up. You don't let pressure break you. Even when it feels heavy, even when it feels too much, you find a way to keep moving. And that's strength. Not loud strength, not visible strength, but internal strength, the kind that keeps you going when no one sees what you're carrying, when no one knows what you're dealing with, when no one understands how much pressure you're under. And that strength, it's real. Even if it feels exhausting, even if it feels overwhelming, even if it feels like you're doing it all alone, because you are, in many ways. But that doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're capable of handling more, of carrying more, of pushing further than you thought you could. And that's what this pressure is doing. It's not just weighing you down, it's shaping you, strengthening you, building something inside you that can't be seen but will be felt, in your actions, in your decisions, in your resilience. Because one day, this pressure won't feel the same, not because it disappears, but because you grow stronger, more stable, more in control, more capable of handling it, because you've been doing it all along, quietly, consistently, without recognition, without support, without anyone fully seeing it. And that matters more than you think, because the person you're becoming is built through this pressure, through this responsibility, through this silent effort to keep going, even when it's hard, even when it's heavy, even when no one knows, because that's what makes you different. Not what people see, but what you carry and how you handle it. And you're handling it every single day, even if it doesn't feel like it, even if it feels overwhelming, even if it feels like you're doing it all alone, because you haven't stopped, you haven't given up, you haven't broken, you've kept going, and that's your strength. Even if no one sees it, even if no one understands it, even if no one knows. Because in the end, it's not about them, it's about you and what you're capable of carrying. And you've proven you can carry a lot, silently, powerfully, every single day.
You can be surrounded by people and still feel alone. Not physically alone, not isolated in a room, but something deeper, something harder to explain, because it doesn't make sense on the surface. You're around others, talking, interacting, responding. But inside, there's a distance, a gap, a disconnect between you and everyone else. And you feel it in conversations, in silence, in moments where you should feel connected, but don't. Because being around people doesn't always mean being understood. And that's what you're missing. Not presence, not noise, understanding, real connection. The kind where someone sees you beyond the surface. The kind where someone feels what you feel without you having to explain everything. But that's rare, because most interactions stay on the surface, basic, safe, predictable. People talk about things that don't go deep, things that don't require vulnerability, things that don't touch what's actually going on inside. And you participate, you respond, you engage, but you don't open up, not fully, because you've learned something. You've learned that not everyone can handle your depth. Not everyone can understand your thoughts. Not everyone can relate to your experience. So you hold back. You filter yourself. You share just enough to fit in, but not enough to be seen. And that creates a divide, because now there's a version of you that exists externally and a version of you that stays hidden. And the hidden version is the real one, the one that thinks deeply, the one that feels intensely, the one that carries everything no one else knows about. And that version, it stays alone, even when you're not, because it doesn't get expressed, it doesn't get shared, it doesn't get understood. So you feel isolated, not because you don't have people around you, but because no one truly sees you. And that's a different kind of loneliness, a deeper one, a quieter one, the kind that doesn't show, the kind that doesn't get talked about. Because on the outside, everything looks normal. You have conversations, you have interactions, you have presence. But inside, you feel distant, disconnected, like you're not fully part of what's happening, because your mind is somewhere else, thinking, analyzing, processing, feeling things that aren't being expressed. And that creates separation between you and others, between your internal world and the external one. And over time, that becomes your normal. You get used to it, used to feeling alone even when you're not, used to being around people without feeling connected, used to keeping things inside because it feels easier, because it feels safer, because it avoids misunderstanding. But that doesn't make it less heavy, because deep down, you want connection, real connection, the kind where you don't have to filter yourself, the kind where you can be fully you without holding back, without thinking, will they understand? Because that constant filtering, it's exhausting. It takes energy. It creates distance, and it keeps you isolated, even in a crowd. But here's the truth. Not everyone is meant to understand you. Not everyone is meant to connect with you deeply. And that's okay, because your depth is not common. Your way of thinking is not common. Your level of awareness is not common. And that means your connection won't be common either. It will be rare. Few people, few moments, few conversations that actually feel real, that actually feel aligned, that actually make you feel seen. And until you find that, you'll feel alone, even around others. But that doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It means you're aware, you're conscious, you think deeper, you feel more. And that creates a different experience, a different way of seeing the world, a different way of interacting with people. And that can feel isolating at times, but it's also powerful because it gives you clarity, depth, understanding that most people don't have. And once you accept that, the loneliness shifts. It doesn't disappear, but it shifts. Because now you're not expecting everyone to understand you. You're not forcing connections that don't feel real. You're not trying to fit in where you don't belong. You're simply being, observing, waiting for the right connection, the right people, the right moments that actually match your depth. And when that happens, it feels different. It feels real. It feels natural. Because you don't have to pretend. You don't have to filter.
You don't have to hide. You just are. And that's what you're looking for. Not more people, not more noise, but real connection, real understanding. And until you find that, you'll feel alone, even in a room full of people. But that's not weakness, that's awareness. And awareness changes everything. Because now you know what you need, and you won't settle for anything less, even if it means being alone for a while. Because being alone is better than being surrounded and still feeling unseen. And you've learned that through experience, through silence, through moments where you felt disconnected even when you weren't. And that's what shaped you. That's what made you who you are. Someone who sees deeper, feels more, and waits for something real, even if no one else sees it, even if no one else understands it, because you do. And that's enough for now.
Right now, it doesn't. Nothing feels clear. Nothing feels certain. Nothing feels like it's leading somewhere. You're just moving, trying, pushing forward without fully understanding why, without fully seeing the result, without knowing if it's even working. And that uncertainty, it's heavy, because you want clarity. You want direction. You want to know that what you're going through means something, that it's not just random, that it's not just struggle for no reason. But right now, it doesn't feel that way. Right now, it feels like confusion, like effort without reward, like progress without proof, like you're giving so much and getting so little back. And that makes you question everything: your path, your decisions, your direction, yourself. Because when you don't see results, it's easy to doubt the process. It's easy to think, maybe this isn't worth it. Maybe I'm wasting my time. Maybe this isn't leading anywhere. And those thoughts, they stay with you, quietly, constantly, making you question what you're doing. But what you don't see is that meaning doesn't always show up immediately. Clarity doesn't always come early. Sometimes you only understand things after you've gone through them, after you've lived them, after you've experienced the full process. Because in the moment, you're too close to it, too inside it, too involved to see the bigger picture. It's like being in the middle of a storm. You don't see the direction. You don't see the end. You just feel the intensity, the pressure, the chaos. But once you're out of it, once you've moved through it, you look back, and suddenly it makes sense. You see the purpose. You see the connection. You see how everything led to something. But right now, you're still inside it, still in the process, still in the part where nothing is clear. And that's where most people quit. That's where most people stop. Because they need certainty. They need proof. They need results to keep going. But you don't have that yet. You only have belief. Not blind belief, but quiet belief. The kind that says, keep going, even when it's unclear, even when it's uncertain, even when it doesn't make sense. Because something inside you feels it, feels that this matters, that this struggle is not meaningless, that this effort is building something, even if you don't see it yet. And that feeling, it's important, because it's guiding you, it's pushing you, it's keeping you moving when logic tells you to stop, when doubt tells you to quit, when uncertainty tells you this isn't working. Because deep down, you know something. You know that growth doesn't always look like progress. You know that change doesn't always feel good. You know that building something real takes time, takes effort, takes going through things that don't make sense at first. But later, they do. Later, they connect. Later, they become the reason you changed, the reason you grew,
the reason you became who you are. Because every struggle, every difficult moment, every silent battle, it's adding something, something you don't see yet, something you don't fully understand yet, but something real, something valuable, something that will matter in ways you can't predict right now. Because life doesn't always give you explanations in the moment. It gives you experiences. And those experiences, they shape you, they teach you, they prepare you for something ahead, something you're not ready for yet, but you're becoming ready for through this, through everything you're going through right now. And one day, you'll see it, not while you're in it, but after, when things start to shift, when things start to align, when things start to make sense, and you'll look back at this version of you, the one struggling, the one questioning, the one pushing through without clarity, and you'll understand something, that this was necessary, that this was part of the process, that this was building something you couldn't have built any other way. Because without this, you wouldn't have the strength, the awareness, the resilience, the depth that you have now. And that matters. More than immediate results, more than quick success. Because what you're building is not temporary. It's not surface level. It's real. It's deep. It's lasting. And that takes time. That takes struggle. That takes going through moments that don't make sense right away. But later, they do. Later, they connect. Later, they become the reason you kept going. So don't rush it. Don't force clarity. Don't expect everything to make sense right now. Because it won't. Not yet. And that's okay. Because your job is not to understand everything immediately. Your job is to keep going, to keep moving, to keep showing up, even when it's unclear. Because that's what leads to understanding. That's what leads to clarity. That's what leads to meaning. Not thinking, not waiting, but doing, continuing, trusting the process even when you don't fully see it. Because one day, you will. One day, everything will connect. Everything will align. Everything will make sense. And you'll realize that nothing was wasted. That every struggle had a purpose. That every moment was leading somewhere. And that somewhere was exactly where you needed to be. Even if it didn't feel like it at the time. Even if it didn't make sense at the time. Because sometimes meaning comes later. Not during the struggle, but after it. And when it does, you'll understand everything. And you'll be glad you didn't stop. You didn't quit. You kept going, even when it didn't make sense. Because that's what got you there. That's what made it all worth it. And that's why you keep going now. In the dark, in the uncertainty, in the struggle. Because one day, it will all make sense.
No one saw it. Not the beginning, not the middle, not the hardest parts. Because those moments, they didn't happen in public. They didn't happen where people could notice. They happened in silence, in private, in the parts of your life no one has access to. And that's why no one truly knows what you've been through. Because from the outside, it didn't look like much. There were no dramatic scenes, no visible breakdowns, no moments that demanded attention. Just quiet struggle, silent pressure, internal battles that never showed on the surface. And you handled it, alone, without recognition, without validation, without anyone saying, "I see what you're going through." Because no one did. They saw you functioning. They saw you moving. They saw you continuing like everything was fine. So they assumed it was. But you know the truth. You know what it took. You know how heavy it felt. You know how many times you wanted to stop, how many times you felt overwhelmed, how many times you questioned everything, your path, your decisions, your ability to keep going. But you didn't stop. That's the part that matters. You didn't stop. Even when it was hard, even when it felt like too much, even when no one was there to support you, to guide you, to understand you, you kept going. Not perfectly, not easily, but consistently. And that consistency, it's what got you here, right now, in this moment, still standing, still moving, still trying. And that's not small. That's not something to ignore. That's something to recognize. Because survival is not always loud. It's not always visible. It doesn't always come with recognition. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's invisible. Sometimes it's just you getting through another day, handling another moment, pushing through another thought that tried to stop you. And no one sees that. No one counts that. No one acknowledges how hard that is. But you should, because you lived it, you felt it, you went through it, and you came out of it stronger, even if it doesn't feel like it, even if it's not obvious, because strength is not always about how you feel. It's about what you've endured, what you've carried, what you've handled without breaking. And you've done that more than once, more than you realize. Because every time you faced something difficult and didn't quit, you survived. Every time you felt like giving up but didn't, you survived. Every time you pushed through when it would have been easier to stop, you survived. And those moments, they add up. They build something inside you that no one else can see, but you can feel. Resilience, endurance, inner strength that doesn't depend on anyone else, that doesn't need validation, that doesn't need recognition, because it's real, because it's yours, because you earned it, through experience, through struggle, through moments that no one witnessed. And that's what makes it powerful, because you didn't do it for attention, you didn't do it for approval, you didn't do it to prove something to others. You did it because you had to, because you chose to, because something inside you refused to give up. And that something, it's still there, still pushing you, still guiding you, still reminding you that you're capable, that you're stronger than you think, because you've already proven it, not through success, not through results, but through survival, through continuing when it was hard, through staying when it would have been easier to leave, through trying when it would have been easier to stop. And that matters more than anything else, because success can be temporary, results can change, but what you've built inside, that stays. That becomes part of you. That becomes your foundation, the thing you rely on when things get hard again, because they will. Life doesn't stop challenging you. It doesn't stop testing you. But now you're different, because you've been through it before, because you've handled it before, because you've survived things you once thought you couldn't. And that changes how you see everything, because now you don't doubt yourself the same way. You don't fear challenges the same way. You don't break as easily, because you know something. You know you can handle it, even if it's hard, even if it's heavy, even if no one is there to support you, because you've done it before. You've survived it before, and you can do it again. And that realization, it's powerful, because it shifts your mindset from fear to confidence, from doubt to belief, from uncertainty to awareness, because now you're not guessing anymore. You're not hoping you can handle it. You know you can, because you already have, in silence, in private, in moments no one saw, but you felt. And that's enough, more than enough, because in the end, it's not about who saw your struggle. It's about who lived it, who carried it, who survived it. And that's you. You did, even if no one noticed, even if no one understands, even if no one ever knows, because you know, and that's what matters. That's what defines you, not what people see, but what you've been through and how you handled it. And you handled it. You survived it, silently,
powerfully, completely, and that's your truth, even if no one else sees it.
Keep going, even if no one sees you. At some point, you have to accept something. Not everything you do will be seen. Not everything you go through will be understood. Not every effort will be recognized. And that's hard, because part of you wants to be seen, wants to be understood, wants someone to say, "I know what you're going through. I see how hard you're trying. I understand how much you're carrying." But most of the time, that doesn't happen. Most of the time, you're on your own, handling things silently, moving forward quietly, without applause, without validation, without anyone acknowledging what it takes. And that can make you question everything. Why you're doing it. Why you keep going. Why you keep trying when no one seems to notice, when no one seems to care. But here's the truth. Not everything you do is meant to be seen. Some things are meant to build you internally, silently, without attention, without recognition. Because that's where real strength is created. Not in front of people, not in moments of praise, but in the quiet, in the unseen effort, in the discipline you show when no one is watching. Because that's who you really are. Not the version people see, but the version that shows up when it doesn't matter to anyone else. And that's the version that defines your future. Because when things get hard, when challenges come, when pressure builds, that's the version that takes over. Not the one that seeks attention, but the one that keeps going without it. And that's what you've been doing all along. You've been showing up, even when no one noticed. You've been pushing forward, even when no one encouraged you. You've been trying, even when no one believed in you. And that matters, more than external validation, more than recognition, more than people seeing your effort. Because that kind of consistency, it builds something permanent, something real, something that doesn't depend on anyone else. And that's what you need. Because if you rely on people to see you, to motivate you, to validate you, then your progress will always depend on them. And that's unstable. Because people come and go. Attention comes and goes. Recognition comes and goes. But your effort, that stays. Your discipline, that stays. Your consistency, that stays. And that's what builds your life. Not what people see, but what you do when no one is looking. So keep going. Not for them, not for recognition, not for validation, but for yourself, for your growth, for your future.
for the person you're becoming. Because that person doesn't need an audience. That person doesn't need approval. That person just needs to keep moving forward, one step at a time, even if it's slow, even if it's hard, even if it feels like nothing is happening, because something is happening. Every single day, you're building something, even if it's invisible, even if it's unnoticed, even if it's silent. Because the most powerful transformations don't happen in public. They happen in private. They happen when you're alone, when you're struggling, when you're pushing through without anyone knowing. And those are the moments that define everything. Not the ones people see, but the ones they don't. So don't stop. Not now. Not after everything you've been through. Not after everything you've handled. Not after everything you've survived. Because you've already proven something. You've already shown that you can keep going, that you can handle pressure, that you can push through, even when it's hard. And that's rare. That's powerful. That's something not everyone has. So use it. Build on it. Keep moving. Even if no one sees you. Even if no one understands you. Even if no one supports you. Because in the end, it's not about them. It's about you. And what you do with what you've been given, with what you've been through, with who you are becoming. Because one day, people will see not your struggle, but your results.